limited information, and this is not that's a rough draft.
What the heck?
That's a rough draft.
Is this another one of your stories, or is this the story I gave
That's
back to you?
the story.
Yeah, it's very his stories are very.
Yeah.
Some people's stories have been just wonderfully long and entertaining. I have not failed to be entertained by anyone's story. Some of them have been quite tragic. There's been much death, depression.
I had to back something up by like why was the child mischievous? Well, of course he's a child, but like.
Yeah, he had quite a backstory. You know, the shepherd boys, death of parents, and okay.
What? Oh no, he ate the boy.
Oh.
Oh, I'm telling you, it's been brutal. Okay, so everybody, let's calm down.
And do you want to know the family of the boy?
Yes.
Is actually his aunt and uncle.
Yeah, because his parents are dead.
Yeah,
okay.
I made him.
It was very detailed. But you know what? Hey guys,
Sorry.
I asked you to be detailed and specific, and you came through in spades. It was very detailed and specific, which meant it was a very lively, vivid story.
Sorry, kid.
Okay. So, before we get started, are we ready to calm down? Maybe if we put Ethan's story away, it will calm us down.
Yeah, it's a lot of depth.
I was reading
It's horrible.
a history book, which I do just for pleasure, and I was reading about ancient Egypt, and I was reading about the rise of the use of papyrus, you know, in Egypt. And I got to thinking, and I realized that somewhere in my house I had sheets of papyrus, but I didn't know where they were.
Why?
Okay, but because I used to teach little kids, not that little. But I used to do a 1st through 3rd and a 4th through 6th grade class, and they met every other week, and we did like introduction to ancient world, and we read stories and stuff, and did crafts. And then I quit because it was a lot of trouble. And I got papyrus for them, and I thought I still had it. So I'm looking, and I asked my husband, I don't know. And so we go downstairs, and we're looking through cupboards in my son's schoolroom, no papyrus. Maybe I gave it all away. So my husband, you can thank him, because he said, where's your hieroglyphic rubber stamps? Which, yes, I have a set of hieroglyphic rubber stamps. And I said, oh, they're in my library, and I would never, there's no room in the box, I would never put papyrus with those. And I go to the shelf in the library, and I look at my hieroglyphic rubber stamps, which are in their little case, and next to them tucked in, sheets of papyrus. I'll be doggone, which I never would have looked there. And of course, I put them there thinking, oh, I'll be so smart. I'll know when I want my papyrus, it'll be next to my rubber. No, it's not. So, unfortunately, I didn't have enough full sheets of papyrus to give everyone a full sheet. But I have for you genuine, grade A, #1 papyrus, which when you get it, you can see, I don't know if you know, it's a plant, right, that grows along the Nile, and they split it, but by the way, they have papyrus growing at the Botanical Center in Moline. So if you go to the Botanical Center, they did last time I looked, in the indoors.
Yeah.
So they split the stem and they spread it out and flatten it, and then they lay out a bunch of the stems like this, and then they crisscross it and flatten it, and you can see the crisscross. So these aren't very big, I know, but you could make a bookmark or something out of it. And it came with, last time I ordered it, I just ordered it off Amazon. So if you're just really, like, I just want big sheets of papyrus for myself, it's not expensive off Amazon. I have a little sheet with the hieroglyphic symbols so that you can copy them if you want to. My husband said, are you going to take your rubber stamps? Like, no, they're 7th and 8th grade, and I really don't have time to do rubber stamp crafts with them today. But anyway, so these are all for you.
Thank you. Very kind.
Even though we already talked about Egypt.
Thank you.
You again? Sheet of
All right,
papyrus.
okay.
Wow.
All right, so I'm just going to send 3 of these down.
This is a lot
I'm going to
tougher
trust that
than,
nobody's going to hoard it.
paper.
So
Yeah.
you would never.
What if he wrote on papyrus? What if like?
It would take ink.
I
Maybe
know.
permanent, but
Maybe.
I don't think think a pencil could do it. Drawing a corner.
There you go.
Oh.
Wow, it works.
Yeah.
Kill the poor papyrus. Poor sheet of papyrus. How
They
dare
used
you?
ink. They didn't have graphs.
I'll use it as a bookmark, yeah.
Ella, you will get papyrus next week.
I
All right.
loved our Josephus reading.
Oh,
Oh my goodness.
excellent.
Yes.
Like the fact that Jezebel be like gone off
Oh,
the.
and the dogs licked up her blood.
Yeah.
And they licked up Nabal's blood.
Well,
Okay,
Not only
are we
that,
over
they
the
ate
papyrus
her.
excitement? Okay. Back to me. I should have done it at the end, right? Excitement. Okay. This week, you read more famous stories about early Rome. And when I say famous stories, I really mean up until maybe my generation or my parents' generation, every educated person knew these stories. They knew them as well as we know fairy tales and things like that. That it was just, our founding fathers of this country, you guys know this, were raised on Greek and Roman literature. They had a classical education. And so when you talked about the geese honking and saving the capital, when you talked about Lucius Scaevola burning his right hand off, they would just know, like if I say Hansel and Gretel, I'm assuming you all know what I'm talking about. And that conjures up a story for you. If I say Cinderella, you know what I'm talking about. And I don't have to tell you the whole story. All these stories were like that. They weren't like that for me. Because by the time I was in school, this was already not being taught. Not for my parents, but probably for my grandparents. So, and you're like, that was a really long time ago, Mrs. Ferguson's grandparents. Not that long ago. 100 years ago, people knew this. So, part of having a classical education is joining in a conversation with people of the past, and the way we do that is know the same stories they knew, right? So these are some of the famous stories that they knew. Plus, it tells us a lot about early Rome, what they thought about themselves. You found out in your reading this week that, unfortunately, we don't really know a lot of this stuff for sure. It's just legendary because when the Gauls came, all the records were burnt. And so there's a famous man named Livy. You do not have to write this down. Livy. And he wrote, if you're in second form Latin, have any of you done second form Latin?
Wait, what's that?
It's the one that's the red book. It's the one where first form is the blue and, okay, never mind.
Wait, there's a second form?
There's four
There's
different
four
forms.
No.
Okay,
Alex,
anyway,
don't
I'm
freak
sorry,
out.
but
We
he
only
wrote
get
a,
through the first one.
it's one of the things you learn in second form, so I won't go there. But he wrote a famous history of early Rome, and he's our source for a lot of the information. I'm sorry to just like ruin your life by telling you there's.
It's stuck
Okay.
on the back of both of the books now.
So the first up, oh, we're lively today.
Yeah.
You're gonna make me emote. My throat's gonna be sore. Was the attack by the Gauls. Who are Gauls? French. Except they're not really French yet, because the Franks are the French, and the Franks won't attack France for a long time. But the Gauls lived in what is now France's Gallia. They lived here, but they also, they were Celtic. And so there were Celtic people living in England. There were Celtic people living in what is now Germany. It wasn't just France, but that area is what the Romans called Gaul. And do you remember that these Alps are easier to get over down into Italy than they are to climb back out? So periodically people would pour over the Alps and kind of ravage Italy a little bit. I would like you guys to get your timelines out, because we're going to do some timeline adding today.
Ooh.
Actually, let me find my paper. Oh, do I?
Permanent marker.
Hang on, you get your timelines, I'm going to go get my paper.
Oh, there it is.
We've already.
Like, no. hold it.
Can I borrow your permanent marker?
Absolutely, sir.
In my stack of favorites that is like this high.
I didn't bring it. I have to do all my things for memory. You know what'll happen? I'll find it in, no, these are the things I just collected from you. Okay. Okay, so get out the page that goes from 500 to, I don't know, 1 or
1 BC,
0
yeah,
or
1
whatever,
BC.
okay? And the first thing we're going to put on it today is, oh, it'll be a little closer to the top, 390 Gauls Sacro. Do you know what I mean by sac?
Yes.
Is that, okay. It's easier to write than attack. Gauls Sacro.
From the timeline.
Yes.
500 to what now?
It should be 500 to like 1
BC.
or 0, except there is no year 0, you know, if you think about it. Like, yeah, it's like a non-existent year, it's the year 0. Nobody said
Is
that.
it from BC or is this AD?
Well, this is all BC, so we're dealing in BC.
Because there's a BC one and then.
Yes, and there's an AD one, which would go the other direction.
Yeah.
So, do you remember last week that there was a general named Camillus? And he got on people's bad side, and they drove him out. And he, as he left, he turned and said, if I'm unjustly driven out, I hope Rome will regret this soon. And soon they did, because these Gauls came, kind of wild guys, you know, just like paint yourself blue, kind of wild druid guys, and started ravaging up and down Italy. And
No women?
what?
No women?
No
Well,
women conquering? No.
no women. They weren't coming to settle. They were just coming to get the loot that they could get, snatch it, and leave. They don't need women for that. The women can stay home. No offense to the women. I don't really want to go snatch loot and
The women could stay home.
fight with swords. And Camillus was holed up at the nearby town of Veii, and he, like a good Roman, because he still loved his city, his country, he got together a band of guys and he started fighting the Gauls out in the field. But in the meantime, the Gauls surrounded Rome. And it did not look good for Rome. So, the majority of the population holed up on the Capitoline Hill and the Capitol. They had a building up there, and it was very difficult to access. All right, one side was just a sheer cliff, the other side was easily defended. The senators, do you remember this part? The senators, however, the older men, you know, they lived their lives, and they wanted to show the Gauls what Romans were like. So they pulled chairs out in front of their houses, and they just sat there with their long beards and their togas, and they're just, you know, so elegant looking and revered. And the Gauls come in, what is this? What are these guys? So one of them, unfortunately, reaches out and just like strokes the guy's beard. Why he chooses that, I don't know. I would just poke him. And the guy, the senator, just whacks him. Just hits him and whacks him. And then, yeah, it all broke loose, and there was blood, death, slaughter in the streets. All the poor old senators got butchered. But they couldn't get up to the Capitol. The Gauls couldn't get up. Meantime, up in the Capitol, they're saying, we need Camillus. And Camillus says, through messengers, going back and forth, I won't come back until they formally recall me. You know, they had passed a resolution that he had to leave. If he comes back, he's breaking the rules. I won't do it unless they tell me, Camillus, please come back and save our city. So they sent a guy to recall him, and as the guy was scrambling, climbing up the rocks of this sheer side, he left footprints behind. He left little chipped, broken pieces of rocks, and the Gauls found it. They're like, wait a minute, somebody's climbing up and down this hill. Can climb up and down this hill. So in your book, they kind of look like a cheerleading, you know, I don't know if that's the way it was done, but you know what I mean? They made a cheerleading pyramid. But one way or another, they got up the hill. But, as we said, you know, I let the secret loose earlier. That was where they kept the geese sacred to Juno, who's the same as Hera. Juno is Hera. Why? Just they did. No questions. And their watchman had fallen asleep, which is, you know, when you're the guard, you shouldn't really fall asleep. Pretty sure they said you got executed later.
Yeah, they got thrown off
Yeah,
the cliff.
yeah. But the geese let loose, honk, 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 and it woke everyone up, and they saved the capital. So they felt like, not necessarily that the geese saved them, but Juno, you know, saved them because they were her geese. So this was in 390 BC. So interestingly, now we get to do math. It's very easy math.
Oh,
Okay.
so much fun.
You do not have to write this down. This happened in 390 BC. It will not be until the year 410 AD that an enemy will enter Rome again. So this is before, this is after, so we can add them. 800 years.
On the dot.
Rome is going to go with never, it's not like they're not going to get attacked from the outside, but Rome itself is not going to be plundered and invaded by an enemy until 410. Interestingly, it's the Gauls. In case you wanted to know. Okay. So, I guess we probably answered a question. We answered the geese question. Oh, okay. So, I'm going to take this down so you can see. Maybe I will.
Yeah, you did it.
Delicate operation.
You should all just clap.
I'm a little sad and pathetic if that's all I have to do to get. Okay, so, notice on our map of Italy, all these tribe names. We have Latium, that's the Latins. Samnium, that's the Samnites. Etruria, that's the Etruscans. They're always, as you probably gathered by now, they're always seem to be at war with these people. I am getting thirsty. And the next, but just to jog your memory, what do they tend to do with the area or the tribe after they beat them?
I mean, if they like the gods, they'll keep the gods.
Okay.
But they will usually give them full Roman citizenship.
Okay, Alice?
I like to celebrate.
Oh, and celebrate. I'm sure celebrate. But all of those are true, but the one I was going for specifically was they absorb them into themselves. So it's not like I'm the Roman overlord and you're my minions and you must do my bidding. It's, hey, let's all be Roman together. You'll find out it's nice to be Roman. We have great roads, we have good laws, we have cool clothes. They probably didn't say that. But it made the conquered people not feel like conquered people, you know? It's like we're all one happy big family. Whether they were or not.
And that's how they kept them in and they didn't revolt.
Yes.
Much.
Yes. Because
If you feel conquered and you feel like you have nothing, you want to revolt more than if you
Absolutely.
like you have everything, you're like part
So
of the
they
people.
were actually pretty.
Except it wouldn't really be a good idea.
before we leave the Gaul invasion, you know, they did, before Camillus came to save them, just to jog your memory, they did pay the Gauls off. Do you remember this? They put gold in the scales, and they thought that they were getting cheated out of the amount that they were supposed to be paying. And the Gauls, famously, how the Gauls spoke Latin, I don't know. But the famous saying, "Vae victis," woe to the conquered. In other words, too bad for you. Basically, is what it means. Just too bad for you. We can do whatever we want. We're the winners. Vae victis. So, you can use that on somebody. I don't know under what circumstances you would.
If I beat my brother in a video game.
Okay, vae victis.
Victis.
All right. And And Camillus came in and he took the gold out of the scales and he said, hey, we don't buy our freedom with gold. We buy our freedom with iron. What did he mean?
You're gonna fight me.
Yeah, with swords. That's awesome. Okay. All right, next question on your list is the next war, the Latin War, with the Latins, which unfortunately are sort of like family. The King Latinus, when Aeneas came first to Italy, he married the daughter of King Latinus, so they're sort of relatives, but apparently not getting along very well. And the Latins wanted full-scale equality. We want Latin senators. And the Romans said, yeah, no, that's not happening. And Titus Manlius was their general this time. And I asked you guys, I said Titus Manlius had to make a difficult decision. Does anybody want to share what difficult decision? Well, oh, yeah, Lauren. We'll let Lauren do it.
He chopped his son's head off.
Yeah, he had to execute his own son because of, well, I was going to say not a good order, but it wasn't a bad order. They had an oracle, a prophecy, that whichever side was willing to sacrifice a general, that was the side that was going to win. So the two Roman consuls, like, you know, one of us is going to need to die. But how about we'll just let it be the one, whoever's soldiers give way first. You know, if they fall back, if they start to be routed, that general will just take it as a sign that I'm going to give my life for my country. Good. But of course, neither of them wanted to do it. So they told their soldiers, you need to be really disciplined, right? We don't want anybody giving way because I don't want to be the guy who has to sacrifice my life. And Titus Manlius had a son named Titus Manlius Jr. Not Jr., it's Titus Manlius. And he went out and he met some Latin guards and they got into one of these little, oh, you guys are a bunch of sissies and you're never going to win. And they got in this little bantering fight and a skirmish broke out. And there was a minor battle. But it was against the rules. So the rule had been no soldiers leave their posts, no soldiers engage the enemy without orders. So yeah, so Titus Manlius said to his son, you broke the rules. Which was a difficult decision. Which reminds me of Brutus having to execute his sons for treason. It also reminds me of something else. Does anybody remember in the Old Testament, there is a story about the commander's son breaking a vow. This one was not a wise vow, and that you wanted to execute him for it.
Which king or commander?
I will tell you, the commander is Saul, and his son is Jonathan. Do you remember?
Yes.
They were fighting the Philistines, and they were, oh, go ahead, tell it.
Didn't they make a vow not to eat anything?
Yes, they weren't going to eat until they conquered the enemy. And Jonathan didn't know. Now, was it a smart vow? I don't know, because when you're like engaged in something highly athletic, you need energy, you know. But Jonathan was out and he came across a honeycomb, a wild honeycomb, and he dipped it and he ate honey out of it. And then they found out, I can't remember the detail. I think the Israelite army started to lose, and they consulted the priest, and he said, somebody's broken the vow. And they find out it's Jonathan. Jonathan comes in like, what's the deal? I was hungry. I was working hard. That was a stupid thing for my dad to say. But Saul took it very seriously. He was going to execute Jonathan, who had been kind of the hero of the day. And it sounds like everybody loved him. They stopped him from executing Jonathan. He said, are you going to sacrifice one of our best generals and your own son? Anyway, it's just very similar, you know, the breaking of a vow. But in the case of the Bible, God, there's mercy, you know, especially when the vow was rash. Oh, okay. So I didn't ask you any questions about the Samnite War. Samnium here. Remember, this is, unfortunately, there's no key, but I'm pretty sure Italy's only about 300 miles long. Italy is not as long as Illinois. So when you think about it, these people all live really close together. It's obviously not nearly as wide as Illinois. So if you put it in that perspective, you see these people are living close together. So they went to war with the Samnites, and the Romans lost. And it says in your book that the general went to his advisor and said, what should I do with them? And he said, you've got two choices. Kill them all, or be really, really merciful. But don't humiliate them and let them go. Why not? What do you think?
Because the Romans were prideful, and if you humiliated them, they would kill you.
Yes. If you kill them all, they can't come back and get revenge. If you're really, really merciful, maybe they don't want to come back and get revenge. But if you humiliate them and let them go, you just stoke the fires, and they're going to come back and whop you. So, what did he do? He humiliated them and let them go. Because he didn't follow the advice. And it says in your book, he made them pass under the yoke. Do you guys know what that means, what that's referring to? Do you think you know?
It's sort of like a ha-ha you lost, except in a much deeper way.
It's a formalized ha-ha you lost. So what they would do, as well as I understand, they would set up spears as posts. They would set up a little gateway with their weaponry. And all the soldiers, so I set up my little gateway, and all the enemy soldiers would line up.
Oh, you turn off.
It's okay. It's
Lord.
okay. And each Roman soldier would have to lay down his weapons, they'd have to give up their weapons, and pass through it with this line of soldiers on each side, basically taunting you, maybe pelting you with rotten vegetables, I don't know. Anything to humiliate you, and saying, ha-ha, you lost. Ve victis, right? And it was, I mean, it's not physically harmful, but it's so humiliating. And that's what they did. They made him pass under the yoke. Not only that, but they imposed really harsh peace treaty terms. So of course they turned right around and attacked them again.
Very
And
smart.
won this time. The last war that we talked about here, we're gonna use our timelines again, but a different page. So I'm gonna erase this. Do you remember, way before Christmas, we talked about a group of people who came to live on Sicily and in southern Italy? What? Greece. Good, because we spent the whole first semester on Greece. The Greeks sent out colonies. Everybody look up here. It says Magna Graecia, Great Greece. Like, well, it's not Greece, it's Italy. Basically, this was an offshoot of Greece. This was Greek territory. And so it was just a matter of time till the Romans were going to clash with the Greeks. They made a arrangement that the Romans would not sail past Tarentum. They wouldn't go over past the field.
That's funny.
Because the Greeks were trading with the Eastern Mediterranean, and they said, you've got the whole West, just let's divvy it up.
They did.
The Romans did not obey this, past Tarentum, and they got into it. So they sent back to Greece, which is right here, and they asked a general named Pyrrhus to come rescue them. Pyrrhus was a big-time general in Greece, but he'd never been out of Greece. He'd never fought wars outside of Greece. And like, this is my claim to fame. This is my ticket to stardom. I'm going to go be the star of the wars against Rome, the up-and-coming power of the world. My name's going to go down in history. And it did, but not in the way he expected.
Yeah.
What is a Pyrrhic victory?
A Pyrrhic victory
Oh,
is,
I'm sorry.
is a victory that almost...
Oh, wait, whoa. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yes. Do it. He wanted us to do it so bad.
It's a victory won at a price.
A victory wanted a price. You're like, because Ethan wanted to do it too.
Yeah.
Yes. A victory wanted a great price. Pyrrhus, I'm sorry, but you did get to answer
It's
this. Okay. Pyrrhus won technically,
Technically.
but he lost so many guys that they say when someone congratulated him on his victory, he said, "Many more victories like that, and I'll be ruined." A Pyrrhic victory. And we still, have you ever heard that in, you will have to trust me that that's a thing, that people, now, but this reminds me of something, what I just said at the beginning of class. The fewer people that know these stories, the less those comments mean to people. Does that make sense? To say Pyrrhic victory means you know the story of Pyrrhus and you know who he is. But if nobody knows, it doesn't mean anything. It might still mean it, I guess, but they might not know where it comes from. But yeah, people will still refer to something as a Pyrrhic victory, and they mean they technically won, but they lost
Like in
a lot
Star
of
Wars.
soldiers, or
Which episode?
yeah.
Which episode?
Tell me the.
Star Wars: The Clone Wars, where both sides lost a lot.
Clone Wars? Ugh.
I didn't watch
Sad.
Okay.
That is so sad.
Clone Wars was awesome.
I think it's awesome.
Okay, here's what disturbs me. We're talking about the wars of Rome and everybody's busy, and then we talk about the Clone Wars and everybody gets excited.
I enjoy
It's hard to
Roman
compete
history.
with that. Yes,
you
you do.
Alex.
Thank you. Okay. He brought elephants with him. Why is that funny?
I mean, Indians.
It is a little
or,
random,
like,
but I just want you
Indians
guys
from
to
India.
imagine something with me for a minute. Imagine you have never seen an elephant, okay? So you gotta go there, like you don't even know they exist. And you're on a battlefield, and you look over, and there are elephants.
That'd be scary.
That would be horrifying. You would first of all, like, that's the creepiest animal I've ever seen, with the long nose thing, and the horrible
It's like a
noise,
fat
and the
horse.
tusks,
Fat
look at
horse.
tusks.
What's tusks?
And then it
And,
moves, and the ground shakes, and you think, if it steps on me, I'm done.
I'm
I mean,
done.
it's true.
It's true. Like, it's horrifying. And then it is my understanding that elephants can get pretty doggone mean if they want to rampage. Like bull elephants, male elephants will rampage and what? I'm trying to think of the word. Like they will rush at you. They will charge you. They will charge you if they're angry.
They can
Oof.
destroy many villages and
So it's kind of horrifying. So not funny.
I know.
I asked you to wrap up. They took away all our chairs, so I laid out some chairs for people. To wrap up, I asked you guys a question which is completely an opinion question. I have no particular answer I was looking for. So everyone got this question right unless you wrote gibberish. Which is, why do you think the Romans were always at war with someone? All right, we're gonna let Alex answer his.
I gave like 9 different answers.
Great.
For expansion, for food, for resources, to conquer enemies. There were quite a few more. I would have to look on my specific paper to name them all.
Alice, what do you think?
Well, they had a lot of good ideas for things. They had some cool inventions. They had big temples, and like we learned, there was treasure in the temples.
Mm-hmm.
And they just had good ideas.
And they wanted to spread them to other people? Was that your idea?
Yeah, or the person who's conquering them wanted them.
Okay. Kyle, what do you think?
for the glory
For glory,
and
all
for
right.
roads.
And for what?
And for roads.
And for
I
roads.
forgot what
The
I was
roads
gonna
have to go
say.
somewhere, right? What do you
What I
think?
was gonna say. Hold up, it'll come back. It'll come back.
No, well,
I
EJ,
didn't
go
say
ahead.
that.
To gain more power and gain more land.
Okay. If it comes, it's okay. If it comes back, raise your hand and I will stop immediately, I promise.
Okay.
It happens to me all the time. You're having a senior moment. Yeah, probably all of those and more.
Oh. I
Oh,
think-
yes.
Okay, so like Rome was like the rise and fame and stuff. They were kind of like the superior version of like Greece and stuff.
Mhm.
And why they were fighting or being fought by people was because those people who wanted to fight like Rome, they knew that Rome was like glorious power and like they were the big dogs, you know?
Mhm.
Like, and it would a lot of glory and fame if
Yes.
you took out Rome.
So hostility on the part of the other people
Yeah.
against Rome. I would say all of the above and probably more. Hey ladies, are you with me? Okay. Also remember the beginnings. Remember Romulus and Remus. Remember Aeneas coming, and the first thing he does is get into a war with people. They're just, I wonder, this is me speculating, I wonder if some groups of people just have, I'm gonna call it a warlike spirit. I don't know what else to call it. There just seems to be people that find their glory, find their fulfillment in war. I don't know, like Vikings going out and pillaging it. Why are you doing it? Well, because it's fun, because that's what we want to do. That's how we make our living. And I don't know, I wonder if some groups of people are just like that. What do you think, Alex?
And then the Italians during World War I and World War II had to lose within the first year or so.
Yes.
They apparently lost their touch.
Yes. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Okay. If there are no other comments on our Dorothy Mills reading, let me just make sure I said everything I wanted to say. Okay, I did. We are, you will notice in your reading questions, we are skipping the next section of the book because we just do not have enough weeks in our year to read everything. However, our writing assignment,
No.
our writing assignment, last week we did an outline. We're gonna do another one of those, and the source I'm gonna give you covers some of the material that we're skipping,
Wait.
so it's kind of another
Wait,
way
we
to
were
get it.
supposed to make an outline?
No, we made an outline together, and you just wrote it up.
Oh,
Yes.
that's what I
You're-
thought.
you're
That's
good.
what I thought you
You're
said.
good. You're good.
Wait a minute.
Miss Ferguson?
Yes.
Last week I forgot to ask you, were you asking for one paragraph or?
Yes, because we outlined one paragraph, so it would just be one paragraph. Okay, so you know what, Alice? We're gonna do it again this week, but when that Roman numeral 1, when we do that, it means one paragraph, one topic.
Needs to be a less
You just
paragraph information.
got ambitious and do more. I will read your paper and I will.
I don't know, my
Darn
reach
it.
is just too
Don't
good.
read it today,
What
unless
happened?
you're pretty sure you understand.
What happened to the brand?
Carthaginians. Wow, so yeah, it's really-
Carthage, yay!
Well, hold on.
Yes, we have to
What are
move
these
on
words called?
to Rome's greatest rival,
Between Carthage and Rome.
Carthage.
Yeah, what is it called?
The Punic Wars.
Oh, the Punic Wars.
I'm pretty sure that Dorothy Mills is going to tell you why, but Punis was the Latin name for a Phoenician, and I've already taken my map down, but here we go. Remember the Phoenicians, we've been talking about the Phoenicians just north.
Do you need help, Mrs. Ferguson?
Oh, I got it. Okay, just north of Israel. Tyre and Sidon. Remember, Ahab married Jezebel, a Phoenician princess.
Yeah.
So,
pretty much what I
Phoenicia, with their purple dye and their snails
And their pagan gods.
and their pagan gods,
And
spread
sacrificial
out
babies.
and planted trading posts all over the Mediterranean. And their most prosperous one was Carthage. And and look at this. Okay, so here's 500 miles. Can everybody see the map? Here's 500 miles. Here's Rome, here's Carthage. Let's see, 300 miles away,
Yeah.
maybe?
Mhm.
Okay, Illinois is more than 300 miles long. It's like the distance
How
from
long is
Chicago
this?
to Cairo or something.
long is
They're
it
not
like?
very far.
How long is Italy? You said
Oh, yeah, we were talking about how long Italy was. Okay, so,
About 500.
okay, about 500 miles. I was short, maybe. Or maybe this is not
200.
perfect. I don't know. Not very long compared to the United States. Okay, so they fought Carthage 3 times. There are 3 Punic Wars because they were wars against these Phoenician people that we're going to talk about for the next 2 weeks. Okay, let's go ahead and look at our Josephus reading, which Ethan says he loved.
Because Jezebel dies.
Oh, because Jezebel died.
Evil woman.
She needed to die.
Well, she needed to die. She was evil. How dare she?
I didn't bring my little Israel map. Oh well, I'll just use my hands. It's smaller anyway.
You have a marker.
Yes, I have a marker. Okay. This week you read the sad stories of the fall of the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. What? No. Are we glad because they got punished for being idolaters?
Yes.
That's what we're gonna hope. Okay.
That's
yes.
what. That's.
So idolatry brings punishment. That's a thumbs up. Remember that Israel had become divided into two kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. In the north, they had a capital at Samaria, and of course in the south, they had a capital at Jerusalem. And I was going to say things degenerated in the north. They started out bad. If you remember the very first king of Israel, Jeroboam, built golden calves because he didn't want the people of the north going down to Jerusalem and settling. Also, another thing happened. When they split, you know, in any group of people, there's going to be people who aren't really very happy being obedient, right? And so when they found out that they were worshiping golden calves here, can you picture that the people who were kind of not so steadfast in their devotion to God gravitated north? And the people who lived in the north who were disgusted with it and wanted to go where the true worship was gravitated south. So the people who loved God more steadfastly ended up moving this direction, and the people who didn't ended up moving this direction. Now, the tribes still had territories. You couldn't, if you had land, you couldn't just up and leave. But in general, there was a shift there from the very beginning. Till we got to Ahab, where he not only brought in a foreign, Phoenician, Baal worshipping, Moloch worshipping, burn your children in the fire, jerk lady. But their daughter married the king of Judah. And so now the families were related. There's almost no king of Israel that's described in the Bible as being a good king. But there are numerous kings of Judah that are good kings. But way back, when they were getting ready to enter the promised land, Moses spoke to them before they went in. And he said, I'm showing you the way of life and the way of death. There's two choices. If you follow God with your whole hearts and obey him, he's giving you this land. But if you don't, if you choose the other path, he will raise up people against you, and they will harass you. And if you persist, eventually, God will remove you from the land. There are conditions to staying here. He warned them. And hundreds of years passed, and they didn't listen. But God warned them, right? What do we call the group of people that God raised up, and they would speak God's words to the people until the prophets, right? Isaiah, Ezekiel, I think Jeremiah, but Jeremiah is this time period. I'd have to run through my Bible book list, but I always have to do the song and start again. Yes, Amos, Obadiah. He raised up prophets to say, if you don't straighten up, God's going to remove you from the land. And in Israel, they just really never straightened up. In Judah, there were waves of straightening up and falling off. But at one point, it got so bad, and picture this. So the kings of Israel and Judah, the kings of the United Kingdom, were supposed to read the book of the law, Moses' books, right? The Pentateuch. They were supposed to read it on a regular basis, and every set number of years it was to be read aloud to all the people. It got so bad that there, and I think this is that boy King Joash that got hidden away. It said they were cleaning out the rubbish in the temple. Okay, first of all, what? There's rubbish in the temple. And they found the book of the law. They lost it. They didn't even know what was in there. And they brought it to the king, and he read it. And often in the Old Testament, you know how it says they tear their clothes? They tear their clothes and put dust on their head. But that's how they show repentance. That's how they show sorrow. Tear your clothing and put dust. He was sorry, and they read the book of the law again. So there were, we would call them revivals, I guess, in Judah. All right. But meanwhile, while all this is going on, okay, gentlemen, come here.
Okay. This.
Do you need my help?
No, they should have it. All right, awesome. Okay. Meanwhile, off to the east, in Mesopotamia. Do you remember we traced these two rivers on your maps? The Tigris and the Euphrates? In this area, there have been kingdoms rising and falling. By the way, does anyone know what Mesopotamia means? It's a fun fact.
Between rivers?
Between the rivers in Greek, because what's a hippopotamus? Hippopotamus and Mesopotamia are related.
In the river. Hippopotamus means river horse.
River horse. I know, isn't that fun? I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
EJ's looking at me like she's gone
River
bonkers.
horse.
I mean,
No.
it makes
Hippopotamus
sense
means
in a
river
way.
and hippos means horse. Hippopotamus is a river horse. And Mesopotamia means between the rivers. Anyway, in Mesopotamia, there have been a series of kingdoms rising and falling. And the kingdom who was super powerful at this point was Assyria. Assyria was in the north part of this area. And their capital, you probably recognize, was Nineveh. There was a prophet sent to Nineveh. Do you remember?
Jonah.
I'm sorry. Jonah, yes. Jonah was
to
going
answer
to
everything
Nineveh.
today. What's going on, Mrs.
on.
Ferguson?
No,
What's going on here?
he's fast. It's like Jeopardy. He's really fast with the buzzer. All right. Alex is banned from the next 3 questions.
That's good.
Well, can I
All right.
can I just say this then?
Yeah.
I was so surprised when I saw this city show up in my history book because I'm like, that's what that is.
Yes.
The capital of Assyria.
Yes, which brings, this is kind of, I guess I should rush it a little bit, but how does it happen that the time passes? Oh, we're at 10:05, right?
Yes.
If we go to 10:05 or even a little after, you guys will be okay?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Yeah, God, this is fascinating to me, because Israel and Judah were disobeying, but God, remember, God cared about everyone. And he sent a prophet to Assyria. Okay, these guys were bad dudes. I don't know how else to say it. They were really, really cruel to the people they conquered. We're talking about cut out your tongue and cut off your hands and just like torturous. Oh, and they, all sorts of inscriptions with pictures of kings with their foot on someone's neck, and it's just, they weren't nice. Remember we talked about the kill them all or be really merciful? He was more the kill them all, except he didn't
Except
kill them
torture
all.
them all.
Yeah, torture them all. This is the group of people that God sent Jonah to go to. Now do you understand why Jonah ran the other way?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't so much that he didn't want to obey God. We find out at the end of the book of Jonah, he says, yeah, God, I knew this would happen. I knew these crummy people, if they repented, you'd be merciful to them. They don't deserve it. They stink.
They stink.
This is not in the book of Jonah. This is me paraphrasing the book of Jonah. But that's what he said. He said, I knew you would have mercy. That's why I didn't want to do it. And God says, shouldn't I have mercy for, and he says how many people, like hundreds of thousands of people, and many cattle. I love that at the end of that. And many, because he cares about the animals too. I care about them too. The world is mine. I get to decide. Anyway, this is the power of the time. This is the time of Jonah, Assyria. And Assyria did what any good empire does, keeps conquering people, right? And torturing them. And so they're spreading out, and the way to spread, remember that fertile crescent? Okay? Nobody wants to own this.
You.
You can't do anything with this. I want to go to the inhabited places and work my way down towards Egypt, the gold mine. So here comes Assyria. And in the Bible it talks about them, hey, they're copying the maps. They come down from the north. They come down because they've come from this direction, right? Unfortunately, Nineveh, I don't know exactly. I don't know if it's between the river, but it's towards the north side. It's towards the north end, okay? And Assyria came to Israel. And Assyria, to cut to the chase, conquered Israel. God turned Israel over to the Assyrians. And they were shipped out. Dispersed through the rest of the Assyrian Empire. This was a habit. The Babylonians are going to do it too. You conquer a people and you pick them up and you move them away to somewhere else. And then you pick that people up and you move them here. Because say we've all been conquered by Assyria. We're all conquered people. But we're not going to sit still and take it, right? We still have each other. I have my friends and relatives and family, and hey, I know the area. This is my home turf. I know hideouts, I know caves. Maybe we can set up a resistance, right? Well, we all get moved and dispersed. We don't have each other anymore. We don't know the country. Basically, we're so absorbed with trying to make a living in our new place that we don't have time to rebel. Does that make sense? All right. So it's kind of a smart plan. So he moves more people in, and these people adopt the capital of Israel, which was Samaria, and they start living there. And because they live in and around Samaria, they are Samaritans. That's the Samaritans. They are foreign people who had been shipped in. And they brought their own gods with them. But when they showed up, there was this other god too, this Israel god, and they decided, oh, we'll worship the Israel god too. It was kind of a half-breed, half-god worshippers sort of thing. That's why the Jews hate the Samaritans in the New Testament. Oh. They're not fully Jews. Remember, this is 700 years before. And because they're not fully Jews and they're not fully devoted to only God. And they don't want anything to do with that. Get your timelines out, because now I'm going to have to wing it, but I'm pretty sure I remember the dates. I want the page that has 1000 BC on the top and 500 on the bottom. And about midway, you should have some dates very close to this. 722, fall of Israel.
Let me check that date. When did Israel fall?
Hey, Kyle, you can do it later and tell me later. Okay. So you should have a couple of dates very close to that. 753. Begin founding of Rome.
776.
706 for the Olympics. Kind of, to put it in perspective, this is what's happening at the same time. Rome is rising. Greece has just entered the historical age with the first historical date we know of. And Israel has been deported. Sometimes people refer to the lost 10 tribes of Israel, the lost tribes of Israel. Those 10 tribes that inhabited the northern kingdom, they got shipped out and they never came back. No, they're not technically lost, but they were just dispersed among the people. And they never came back. Now, Assyria didn't stop because, why stop? We're doing so well, let's go down and attack Judah. Judah had a king named Hezekiah, and he was one of the good guys. And the Assyrian general came, and he just stood outside the walls of Jerusalem and just did a lot of what we would refer to as trash talking. All right? You're all gonna die, and don't think your God will save you, because no other gods save their countries from us. There's no God that can stand against our God, and you're just a bunch of losers. And the king's ministers come out and they say, could you just talk to us in, I don't remember what language they chose, but don't talk to us in Hebrew. Don't speak to us in a language that the common people don't understand, because we don't want them to hear this. And they said, no, we're going to speak in your language, because it's them, they're all going to die, and their kids are going to die. And okay, it was not good.
Wow.
And Hezekiah, it says in the Bible, took the message that came from the commander, and he went to the temple and he laid it before God. And this is Mrs. Ferguson's paraphrase again. Basically said, God, look at what your enemies are saying. Are you going to put up with this? Look what they're saying about you. He's like, I don't know. He says, we do not know what to do, but our eyes are on you. Which is a really good place to be. We don't know. God, you're going to need to do something about this. They went to sleep, and the next morning they got up, and the entire Syrian army was dead.
What?
Wow. 186,000 soldiers were dead.
186,000?
Yeah.
Were they ready to fight, or were they just dead in their tents?
No, they were just dead in their tents, just apparently laying around in their tents. Because they finally, they
God
realized,
was mad.
in Jerusalem, they realized something was up. They weren't, nothing was happening. And a couple of poor, beggar guys who were outside the gates went over and they said, well, they won't let us in, Jerusalem's under siege. If we go in there, we're gonna die. If we go to the enemy, we're gonna die. But, maybe we'll get some food out of it. And so they go over and they want, yes.
Yeah.
And they wandered into the tents and they found food and they said, well, we can't just keep this to ourselves. We have to go tell them that they're dead. And that's how they found out. So I'm going to attempt, there is a wonderful poem that if, you might want to memorize, because it would be a good thing to memorize, by Lord Byron, and it's called The Destruction of Sennacherib. Sennacherib is the Assyrian king at the time. We don't know that he was present with the army. A lot of times kings send their armies out, they don't necessarily physically go. So Sennacherib, anyway, didn't die here, because he got assassinated at home later. But let's see if I can do it. Sometimes if I start looking at you and start to be active, then my mind slips, so I might just have to zone out. But have you all recited poetry in front of people before, or recited something?
Mm-hmm.
So you're sympathetic. You will be merciful if I watch it.
Mercy.
Yeah. But it's a wonderful poem. Okay, here we go. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold, and the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea when the deep wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved and forever grew still. And there lay the horse, with his nostril all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride. And the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail. And the tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown. And the widows of Asher are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. For the might of the Gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. That's a good part. That's a good part. That's awesome. The Destruction of Sennacherib by Lord Byron.
Where'd you learn that?
I did. My kids memorize. I made my kids memorize poetry.
Yeah.
What's it called again?
The Destruction of Sennacherib. Here, I will spell
The only reason,
Sennacherib.
the only reason Ethan's memorizing that is he likes death and destruction.
I don't.
Sennacherib.
Oh, please. All of your stories include death or
Byron.
hungover crickets.
Byron. Okay. All right, we got to move on. While you write that down, I got to keep going. Obviously, the Assyrian army did not capture Judah at that point, but this was just a reprieve because Judah kept going downhill. In the meantime, Assyria fell, and there was a new power on the scene, Babylon, the Babylonian Empire. And they basically did the same thing the Assyrians did. They conquered all the former Assyrian territory, and they came to Judah, and at this point, Judah was a mess. Theologically, religiously, a mess, yes.
But weren't the Babylonians a little more mild than...
Oh, yes, the Babylonians were much milder. Yes, thank you. No, they were not. When I said did the same thing, I meant went around conquering,
Okay.
but not being as cruel to the conquered. So they came, and this is the other thing I want to add to your timelines. 586. In 586, fall of Judah. Babylon came and sacked Judah, sacked Jerusalem, deported many of its citizens, including Daniel and his 3 friends, took them off to Babylon, imported new people, but God raised up a prophet at the time named Jeremiah. Jeremiah is sometimes called the weeping prophet. He was sad because his country was getting devastated. But he told the people, you need to submit. This is from God. You disobeyed. This is God's punishment. Take it like a man. You know, take your punishment. Because it's not going to last forever. God's going to bring you back. The Israelites didn't get that promise, and they didn't get brought back. But the southern kingdom, you will be in exile, but God will bring you back. For 70 years, the Israelites were in exile in Babylon.
That's it?
Yeah. And then God raised up a new leader, Cyrus of
It's only
Persia.
70 years. That's one generation.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's just one
Yes.
generation.
So one thing that the Babylonians did, they completely obliterated Solomon's temple, the temple Solomon built. It was gone. They took the furnishings from the temple home with them, and you may remember a certain occasion in which a Babylonian king decided to have a little party with them, and a huge hand started writing on the wall, telling him that he'd been weighed in the scales and found wanting, and his kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians, who were the next up-and-coming power. Yeah.
Wasn't the inscription like Mene,
Tikal Parson, something
Yeah.
like that. And but apparently they needed Daniel to translate it for them because it was obscure to them. This is the sad story of the fall of Israel and Judah. 70 years later, they came back and they started building a new temple. But there's this very poignant episode where the people who came back looked at the temple. They built a new temple, and it said there was weeping and there was rejoicing. And the sound was so loud, you couldn't tell the weeping from the rejoicing. Rejoicing young people, because, yay, we have a temple again and we have a home again. And weeping old people, who as children remembered the glory of the original temple. And this didn't match it at all. And they remembered, we did this with our sin. We did this. But the Israelites came back in waves. The books of Ezra and Nehemiah tell you about those waves of rebuilding. But as you guys know, eventually this whole area is going to get taken over by Alexander the Great. And there are going to be Greek rulers. So, for next week, I want you to read. Oh, I don't have my paper, so just a second, I'm gonna have to calculate. What are you doing? Okay, so.
I'm so glad we're
Oh, I remember. You're reading chapters 95 through 125.
Oh, wow. Really? That's it?
95.
It's only 30 chapters.
I'm writing it. 95.
Oh, I thought you meant pages. Oops.
No, chapters.
Okay.
95 through 125. Okay. Which will take you, hey guys, which will take you into territory that is not covered in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
We will learn something about what happens under the Greek rulers in what the Romans are going to call Judea. I don't know. You get your book and you
That's a lot.
will have to
I'm joking.
do the math. Okay, so last week we did some expository writing, also known as a report, on Rome. What was it? I can't even remember the topic already.
Religion.
Roman religion, thank you. We are going to do another one. I told you I was going to give you this to do on your own, but I'm splitting the difference. We're going to do 2 paragraphs this week. So Alice, we're doing 2 paragraphs, right? And we're going to outline one of them together, and you're going to do the second one at home, all right? If everyone feels like they're ready to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When we get through the first one, we will see. But let me give you your resource, first of all.
What?
I'm a riveting teacher, obviously.
Oh, I didn't get
No, I
much
feel
sleep.
like that too.
It's a better point.
No.
Sir?
No comment.
I mean, ma'am, can you chill?
5 years old and yelling.
Stop being,
Tried to
stop
take it
being
away.
like Jezebel, okay? Stop being Jezebel.
Okay,
Ooh,
so, this is about, maybe not as interesting, but Roman government. Romans excelled at governing. Obviously, when you have a huge empire, you have to be good governors, or a rebellion will break out all over the place. So, if you will notice, we have 2 sections on this paper I gave you, right? At the top, it says the government of the Roman Republic, and at the bottom, it says social change. Here's what I want, everybody get a piece of paper out. Here's what I want you to do at the top of your paper. I would like you to write, Roman society. This is a title that takes in both of these. Roman society is made up of their government, social change, all right? We're going to do 2 paragraphs. So beneath this title, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put a Roman numeral 1, and then number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then write the word clincher. Then below it, we're going to do the same thing with a Roman numeral 2.
Only 6?
Yes. I'll discuss that further, but for now.
You don't have to use all 6. You just have to make a paragraph, which is technically 4.
Mm-hmm.
But who does this for? That's kind of weird.
Yes.
We're
Okay, does
crazy
everybody,
at
I-
these essays.
I know it might be, if, back in the back, if you have trouble seeing the very bottom, tell me, okay? If I write something and you can't see it. But it's the same thing, it's just a Roman numeral 2 and 6, okay? So, notice on your paper you have already 2 divisions, don't you? You have information on Roman government, and you have information on social change. Those are going to be the topics of our 2 paragraphs. So, by the Roman numeral 1, I'm going to write Roman government. And by the Roman numeral 2, I'm going to write social change. Okay, so here's the important thing to realize about paragraphs. Okay, we just started here.
Okay.
We're outlining, we're doing 2, like a 2 paragraph, each one. We're just starting.
Okay.
A paragraph is the same as a topic, a single topic. Okay? If I were writing a paragraph about dogs, 1 paragraph about dogs, I won't suddenly throw something in about my pet cat, because that doesn't have anything to do with dogs. If I were writing a paragraph on training my dog, I wouldn't suddenly start telling you about what he likes to eat. Do you see? Because that's not what I'm talking about. I want my paragraph to be 1 topic. Now, obviously, this doesn't apply when you're telling a story or something like that. But when you're doing a report, when you're giving information, the first sentence ought to tell your reader what's going to be in this paragraph. And in this case, this whole paragraph is going to have something to do with Roman government. And this whole paragraph is going to have something to do with social change. Now, this is easy for us because it's all divided for us on the paper. This makes it very easy. But what if we had a stack of books, you know, and we're taking notes out of them?
Oof.
And we run across something about gladiator games. Yay. Oh, I want to write that down. You can't, because that's not your topic. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pounding it in, but for some reason it seems sometimes it's hard to get a grip on.
Yes.
So, last week I told you the rule for deciding what we're going to write down is deciding if it's interesting or important. Usually we want 4 to 7 interesting or important things. So I give you 6 if you want to put a 7 on there, but I really don't think you need less than 6.
Yeah.
Like there's, especially for the Roman government, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm you now. I'm impersonating all of you. I'm sitting down with my source. First thing I'm going to do is just read the little bit at the top of the page. I'm going to mull it over. Rome was governed by a senate, originally a group of 100 men who were leaders of important patrician families. Later, the number of senators was increased. By 82 BC, there were 600. Senators normally served for life. Each year, citizens voted in an election, known as an assembly, to elect senators to be government officials. The various officials and their duties are shown below. Okay, so now I'm thinking it over. I'm you. I'm thinking it over. It says Rome was governed by a senate. That seems pretty important to me, that all of Rome was governed by a senate. So I'm going to write down, and I'm going to give myself 3 or 4 words, just to remind myself of what it was. I'm going to write Senate. Oh, I'm not going to worry about dates. This is a short paper. I don't need to get into that. Senate elected for life. I think that's important. The senators elected for life. All right, that's good enough for me. Again, it's only 1 paragraph on Roman government. Can I tell everything there is to say? I don't really have room, but that seems to sum it up. I think that they had a senate that was elected for life. All right, now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start at the top where it says 8 praetores. Does everyone see that? And I'm gonna go around clockwise, like the direction the hands of a clock go. I'm gonna start with that one. 8 praetores were elected, mainly to be judges in the law courts. Laws are important, like judges are important. I'm gonna write that down. 8 praetores, judges. Also, it's kind of interesting because 8 isn't very many they must have had sub-judges, under judges.
So praetors is their word for judges?
Yes.
Or maybe it's sort of like our, high court, or?
Yeah, like the Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court, thank you.
Okay, 'cause I just thought that's kind of important. All right, moving around clockwise. 4 aediles looked after markets, streets, and public buildings. They also organized and paid for public games and could become very popular. Oh, see, that's interesting, because I'm all about the games. I want to know who's in charge of the games. I'm writing that down purely because I find it interesting. Aediles, and then I'm going to put a colon. What did they do? Games, that's important. Markets and streets, good enough.
What do they do?
They organize the games.
Oh, they
And
just ideals, games, markets,
Well,
and streets.
would everyone be able to probably remember that they were in charge of organizing games, markets, and streets?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I'm moving around clockwise. Each year, 20 financial administrators called quaestores were chosen. They did not have to be senators to be elected. After 80 BC, anyone elected as a quaestor also became a senator. Okay, I'm not into finance as much. I think that's boring. I'm skipping it because I think it's boring. All right. Oh, I like the sound of the next one. In emergencies, the state could nominate a dictator who normally served for a maximum of 6 months. He had absolute authority over everyone else. A dictator could nominate his own assistant, called magister equitum, master of the horse. Ooh, I like dictators. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put emergencies, and then a little arrow, lead to a dictator. 6 months. And just because I think it sounds cool, I'm writing down the master of the horse. Would you like to be the master of the horse? Okay.
I mean,
and
I wonder what
I'm going to put a little arrow from dictator, assistant, master of the horse. Just because I like the way it sounds. Oh, we're almost done with our first paragraph. Awesome. And we only have 1 box left. Oh, shoot. We have to have a number 7. Sorry. Okay. All right, next box. Every year, 2 censores, or censors, were chosen from the former consuls. Censores served for 18 months. They revised the membership of the Senate, removed unworthy members, enrolled new senators. They were also responsible for making the state's contracts for public works and tax collection. It's kind of cool that they had, we still use the word censor today to say, to regulate what people are exposed to, or like if I censored a book, I might remove objectionable parts that I don't want your young eyes to see, or censors watch the movies and give them the ratings, decide if they're PG-13 or incidental smoking. I want something. My favorite is historical smoking. It was the monument then. Right, those are our censors. But no, I'm running out of room. We're skipping the censors. Sorry, censors. Okay, last box. 2 consuls, the most senior officials, were elected each year. They managed the affairs of the Senate and the Roman armies. After their year in office, consuls could become proconsuls, which meant governors in the provinces. Okay, 2 consuls, 1 year. I'm going to write 1 YR. I want to say that they managed the Senate, because they're kind of managing the Senate, managed all. We're gonna say managed all of the above. All right, so now I've done my first paragraph. So if I am you, the next day I come and I say, okay, yesterday I did my outline, and now I'm ready to turn this into a paragraph. I don't really need that. I might have to glance at it if I don't remember something. But I'm gonna look at what I wrote, and I'm going to turn it back into sentences that make sense together. So I might write something like this. Roman government was built of many elements that work together. So I'm going to talk about the many elements. Okay, so I've mentioned in my first sentence, what am I writing about? Roman government. I've said that in my first sentence. So if somebody reads my paragraph, they will say, this paragraph is about Roman government. Now I'm going to look at my notes. I'm going to write, first of all, they had a group of men called the Senate, all of whom were elected for life. Yes.
I actually put the two consuls, because
Yes,
but they're
okay.
above the Senate.
Yes, Kyle mentioned this. I'm going to do it my way, but that would be perfectly legitimate. You don't have to do them in the order you wrote them down. You can scramble the
And
points.
also, you can mix two of the points together.
Yes, you can. These don't, I mean, I'm kind of probably going to mix 4 and 5 here.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next sentence might say, to serve as judges, they elected 8 praetors. The aediles had the exciting job of organizing the public games, as well as taking care of regulations for markets and streets. If emergencies arose, they could choose a dictator to serve for 6 months, along with his assistant, the master of the horse. And here's why I'm going to leave it to the end. Over the Senate and all of these were placed 2 consuls who were elected for 1-year terms and, well, I guess I already did the managed all, because over all of these were placed.
Well, technically the dictators were over the consuls.
Yeah, but they weren't dictators all the time. And there weren't any
6
consuls.
months.
Yeah, anyway, don't. Let me go with it, okay? So I've written my paragraph. Now here's what I'm gonna do. Notice this word clincher. Some of you know what this means and some of you don't. If I write my paragraph and I just stop right here, overall we're 2 consuls elected for a year that managed everything. It just sort of drops. It's nice to have a way to conclude my paragraph, to wrap it up, and to remind my reader what I'm talking about. So I'm going to write a last sentence. Everybody with me? I'm going to write a final sentence that repeats what my topic is. My final sentence could sound something like this. These many offices helped the Roman government run so smoothly that it expanded into a great empire over the Mediterranean world. Notice what I mentioned again. Roman government. I mentioned it again. And it reminds me, there's lots of paper shuffling, but is everybody still with me? Yeah. It reminds me what this paragraph is about. The man who made the Institute for Excellence in Writing system, he has a kind of catchphrase. He says, we're not very smart, not just us in this room, but people in general. And if you want people to remember something, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's what you're going to do. Tell me what you're going to tell me, then tell me, then tell me what you told me. Right? And then I'll remember. Now, everybody look at me. Does everyone in this room feel like you could take the bottom half of the paper and do the same thing on your own?
Yes.
Do we feel comfortable with that? Okay? So here's what you're going to do this week. You're going to go home, you're going to read the bottom half of the paper, and how are you going to decide what to pick?
Source.
Interesting or important?
The
Well,
source.
relevant would be important too.
Relevant.
All right, and that's your call. Does yours need to look like other people's?
No.
No, it does not, okay? You're gonna pick the points, and then you're gonna sit down, and you're gonna write 2 paragraphs. Simply by
Two.
turning your notes back into sentences. Are we good?
Yes.
All right, good luck. Read Mills, read Josephus, have a great week, see you next time.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Enjoy your papyrus. Oh, and would you guys get the clips down for me?
Oh yeah.
I got it.
So I don't forget.
Kyle will do it.
Oh, I guess I
himself.
can turn off the computer.
Comes right there in your book.
Bye, Ella.